The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. Greetings and welcome back to the Personal Safety Show. This is Marcus Melnick with Firearm Mentor and Stress to Logic, your host, and I'm here continuing the conversation with Ray Luskin. We were talking about the 4 pillars of her passion and purpose. And Ray, please continue.
So I've already mentioned visioning. I have mentioned mindfulness. The other piece is expression. And again, I'm not telling you, I believe, and they've done studies, that 98% of children are creative. But somewhere along the way, there is a teacher or a parent who says, oh, you're just not that creative. You're not that talented. You'll never make money. So they just stop being creative. But creativity is more than being an artist. It could be the way you cook. It could be the way you garden or problem solve at work. That is creativity. So I want to get people back into that mindset that they are creative, that they have numerous ways to express themselves. So that is one of the pieces that I work on. That's one of the pillars. And the last one is activism. Again, I believe that we all can make a difference. And it could be as simple as making decisions that for 1 week, every day you're going to talk to a stranger. You ask them how they are. You look them in the eye. You smile at them, say, how's your day going? And really wait for an answer. And I think that makes, anybody can do that. So one of my favorite stories is about a homeless man in Deerfield. That's where I live. And let me tell you, there are not a lot. There are usually, most at one time, I think there were 3. And this man I saw in the park when I walked my dog, and he was scrounging through the garbage looking for food. And I felt terrible. So I went to Jewel, and I got a Jewel card because I figured he could walk over there. And I pretty much threw it at him because I didn't know him, And so I just got it, and I walked away. But then I noticed he was in the library all the time. And I finally went up to him to talk to him, and he said, oh, thank you so much for that Jewel card. You don't know what a difference it made. I hope you're not mad. I said, why? Why would I be mad? He said, I bought dog biscuits to share with the dogs in the park. Aww. Now, here is a man who had nothing, and he was able to do that. And he became such a great teacher for me. And that's what I mean. You don't know how you can change somebody's day by just looking them in the eye and asking how you are. There was another man. He was a musician, and he told me this story that he was walking down the street and there was a homeless woman, and he stopped, he went by her, and they came back. He said, I'd like to give you money. And she said, no, I don't want your money. He said, well, how can I help you? She said, I need a hug. Oh. He gave her a hug and his business card. And 6 months later, she called him and said, I hadn't been touched by anybody in a year. I have to tell you, I now have a job. I'm off the streets, and I want to thank you. And it was more than that, because he went home after that experience and wrote a song about hugs, and it became a nonprofit theme song. So there are so many stories like that. And I know I go to the beach all the time, as I was mentioning before, and I'll talk to people. I had this great conversation with a stranger. It turns out these 2 women were up here from Texas, and we started talking, and it was just like, we were talking about gratitude and how we find it and where spirit is. This deep conversation in 10 minutes. Now, I always have been like this. I love to talk. I'll talk to anybody, as my kids would say. But I see my daughter does that now, too. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. So you have some awards. Can you talk about the awards that you've received?
Well, over the years, I did win some art awards. And then in 2016, when I published my book, The Creative Activist, I got this Women of Distinction Award, and the book won an award. Now, I visioned that my book would be an award winner. I did. I visioned who would write the foreword. I wrote about, this vision about the book and winning an award, and who I wanted people to, what people I wanted to write, testimonies. And it was really cool because it did come true. So this was the Benjamin Franklin Award. It was an Independent Book Award. And at the time, and I wish I could remember, but I was up against some people like that I had studied. So it's like, oh, this is so cool.
We talked about healing. Let's talk about what are some of the signs of abuse?
I'm just going to focus on one, I think, right now. There's abuse. There is abuse in the sense there's rape on campus. Domestic violence is another one I'm intimately familiar with. Not from my experience, but I've been working for years with the National Council of Jewish Women, and there was an organization that was sponsored by JUF called JCARES, Jewish Community Abuse Response Education and Solutions. I was one of the earliest members of that too. So when kids, and from my own experience too, oftentimes there's a great website called RAINN, RAINN. It's a rape, abuse, and incest national hotline, basically. And you can go there, and they have a lot of details on this, but you can go in and find out that there are behavioral issues. Oftentimes kids, they may stop bathing, they have bedwetting, they have sleep problems, they may shrink from touch. I at one point told my mother, don't ever touch me again. She never asked me why. This was a big thing in my life. Why didn't you ask me? So there is the physical, sometimes depending what it is, there could be blood on the sheets, there's bruising in the genital areas. And then there's some verbal things too that people need to be aware of. Kids may be less talkative. They start talking about things that they shouldn't know anything about. Their vocabulary changes, that kind of thing. So those are the biggest ones that I can think of, and being aware of that.
What I hear you saying, and you may have just mentioned it, but I want to draw attention to it, is if you encounter or have a child, or you're working with children, and that child exhibits some of these traits, that we should just talk to them, find out what's going on.
Well, yeah, and talking to them, and then you get, there is the mandate if a teacher or a parent finds out, they have to call it, But I think that you have to encourage your kids to speak up. If you can't just, you just don't come out and say, did anybody hurt you? Because it could feel good, and you have to go slowly, be patient, and really talk to them at their level. And sometimes that's challenging. If you're talking 5 and 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, there is a challenge because they don't have the words to explain what's going on usually. So the older kids, yes, and you have to say you're never going to get in trouble. I'm not going to be mad at you. This is just something I've noticed that you seem to have changed a little. Can you tell me what's going on? Those kind of things. And you have to be gentle and take your time, and it may not all come out at once. But you also have to believe your kid. If they say something is wrong, believe them. Too many times parents have turned away. Oh, that can't be true. Uncle so-and-so did that. Oh, that would never have happened. That's not true.
Right. So very, very interesting. And one of the other things I'm going to add to that, just because I'm a huge studier of the human stress response, is when you're the adult, you have to manage your own frustration, your own, anger. If your child has been hurt, it is not an easy ride for a parent. So you have to keep your own emotions in check as well. So can you again reiterate to listeners about your business, your website, and how they can contact you?
Well, you can go to rayluskin.com, and there's a contact page there. I'll also give you out my business number, 847-948-0315. There are a lot of hotlines if you're really in an emergency situation, if anything has come up for you. I am not a licensed therapist, but I am here to listen, and I often can direct you to people who I know are working with a lot of people. I love to help people to share their story. I've been working on a new project that's called Women Who Dare.world. And it is taking all these stories that I've collected of all these women over the years who have either been abused or experienced, or a family member has, and what they've done to change their lives, the world. And sometimes it may be you open an organization. I just talked to a woman the other day, and she's gone to Senegal and learned about sex trafficking, and she was so appalled she came back here and had to do something. And she actually wrote a documentary and won an award for it. And that was just because it touched her so deeply. It wasn't a personal story for her. And I've met so many people like that. And then I've met people on the other end who are doing amazing work. So there's a woman in Illinois called Erin Murren, and she was abused by her uncle. And so she has gone around, and in 38 states, she's gotten laws passed called Erin's Law, that you have to start talking about this in school. You can't ignore it. I collecting these stories. I would like to create a TV series where I highlight these people and these, the stories and the people around the world, especially the women who are making a difference. So this is my new passion project. So I just thought I'd share that with you. So, but I would love to coach you. If you are a woman who wants to develop their creativity, wants to find out how they can make the world a better place with the gifts and skills and talents they have, especially if you're thinking about retiring or changing careers, there are so many opportunities for you to use your gifts and talents. If you are somebody who needs a little help in mindfulness, in calming down, being present, letting go of overwhelm and stress, I'm your girl.
Awesome. Ray, what final thoughts can you offer? Maybe something I didn't ask you and I should have asked you about what you do and how people can help themselves.
I think helping yourself, excuse me, is wonderful. There are tons of books out there. Now, I was never a person who just read a book. If there were questions, I answered them. I believe in journaling, and it's something you can do for yourself. Now, if you are triggered and you're in pain, you have to find a professional or a mentor or a coach, somebody to help you along the way. But that is a self-help tool anybody can have. And there's so many free resources for journaling out there. And, even there's people who once a month just ask questions. And if you dived into that, that is a big piece of what you can do to heal yourself. Again, I mentioned gratitude. There is, even if you don't want to get a gratitude journal, there is a Gratitude 365 app that you can buy. And every day they have something inspirational for you to think about and listen to. And then you write a gratitude and then what 3 amazing things that happen. I do that at night, and I use my gratitude journal in the day. So that when you go to bed, you're not thinking about all the crap that went on in your life. You focus on what is good and amazing and wonderful. Those are 3 things. And then again, always scribble and doodle. If you've got something and you just don't even have the words, so scribble it out. And then you can ask, and this is the way to take it that extra level is, okay, what colors did you use? Did any images come up? Any words come up? And then write about it, almost like a Mad Lib. Purple Mountain Majesty. Oh, my word. So whatever, and you start playing with it. So those are things you could do all the time for yourself. And breathe.
Yes.
Our breath is something we all have access to, or you hope you do. And you can just take a breather. You just slow it down, get calm, and notice your breath. You don't even have to do anything different. And if you just keep breathing a few times and notice what you notice, and you can do it longer and longer. So you can breathe in, hold it, breathe in for 4, hold it for 4, and then let it out for 8. And then, this kind of box breathing, that is something you can do to calm yourself at any time.
Perfect. That's actually in my book that's going to be published in March. So 100%, we are all on the same page. Ray, thank you very much for taking the time to educate our listeners on how art and mindfulness can help them through adversity. I greatly appreciate your time. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure. Love talking to you.
Well, folks, there you have it. Ray Luskin from rayluskin.com. That's RAELUSKIN.com. And if anyone has any art or expression type needs, please look her up. And I want to shift to a story that came out this week in Michigan. So several years ago in December, there was two parents in Michigan, and they bought their high school age child a 6-hour firearm for, I believe it was for Christmas. And that teen went into his school and committed a school shooting. Well, the story is about the mom, Jennifer Crumbly. She's the mother of Ethan Crumbly. She was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter in her son's school shooting. And this shooting did happen in 2021. The story is out of Pontiac, Michigan. And the mom was charged in connection with her son's deadly school shooting rampage in 2021. She was convicted Tuesday of involuntary manslaughter in this unprecedented case. Very interesting because the father of the Highland Park shooter was also, he took a plea bargain, but it's still a conviction. He served his time and he came out. Now, there's a difference in the cases. The difference is the one in Highland Park, the shooter was actually of age and could have gotten his FOID card issued to him had he applied, which is why my personal opinion is the father, Cremo, was not guilty of a crime because the crime was committed by an adult, not a child. This is a little bit different. You don't give a kid under the age of 21 a firearm. This unanimous verdict came the second day of jury deliberations, where Crumbly became the first parent to be held criminally responsible for a mass shooting committed by their child. Now, I'm going over an article. Obviously, it's the second one, maybe even the third. The mom's age is 45. She was convicted on all 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, one for each of the victims in the attack at Oxford High School. The son, the shooter, is now 17. He pled guilty as an adult to murder, terrorism, and other crimes and was sentenced in December to life in prison without parole. Now, mom faces up to 15 years in prison per count. That's 4 times 15, or 60 years because she gave her son, who probably shouldn't have had a firearm, a firearm. A member of the jury said it was very difficult. Lives hung in the balance, and we took that very seriously. The jurors said the decision was hinged in a large part on who was the last adult to handle the weapon. The thing that really hammered it home was that she was the last adult with the gun, said the juror. The father, Craig Schillig, The father of one of the 4 victims in the school shooting teared up when the verdict was announced. He later hugged Oakland County Prosecutor Karen McDonald and the members of her team and shook hands of the police officers who testified. We've been asking for accountability across the board, and this is one step towards that, Schilling said outside the classroom. I feel that moving forward is not going to be any easier because of what we left behind, but it gives hope for a brighter future. The trial opened on January 25th in Oakland County and hit the themes of things like good parenting and gun safety, and it has come at a consequential moment in the U.S. where school shootings have affected communities like Uvalde, Nashville, Perry, Iowa. And in an effort to determine to what extent the parents should be held accountable of their actions, the jurors examined more than 400 pieces of evidence, including texts and photos from Crumbly's cell phone and dramatic video of the shooting spree, which left many in the courtroom shaken. Prosecution called more than 20 witnesses, including police officials and school staff members, while the defense just brought in one who was the defendant. To prove its case, the prosecution tried to portray Crumbly as a neglectful mother who cared more about her hobbies and carrying on an extramarital affair than about spending time with her son. Then, when she and her husband gave her son a semi-automatic handgun as a gift in the days before the shooting, prosecutors said neither of them properly stored it. On the day of the shooting, after the Crumblies had been summoned to the school because of a disturbing drawing of a gun made by her son, the parents didn't tell school officials that he had access to a firearm. They also didn't take him home. He went on to kill 4 students, ages 14 to 17, and the defense lawyer, Shannon Smith, suggested it was James Crumbly, the father, who was specifically in charge of storing the weapon, and that the school knew that Ethan was having trouble paying attention in class, but didn't fully inform Jennifer Crumbly. Smith said that he asked the jury in her closing argument to acquit the client, not just for Jennifer Crumbly, but for every mother out there who's doing the best they can, who could have easily been in her shoes. James Crumbly, age 47, is expected to stand trial next month on the same charges. The judge in Crumbly's trial imposed a gag order that prevents prosecution and defense from speaking publicly until after his trial. Jennifer, the mom, took her stand in her own defense. She testified that her son was generally worried about his future after high school and was depressed, but his mental health never alarmed her enough that she felt he needed to see a professional. She acknowledged that she could have taken him home on the day of the shooting, but she also didn't believe he was capable of committing such violence. More than 2 years after the shooting, she told the jury she wouldn't have done anything different. I don't think I'm a failure as a parent, she said. Craig Schilling said the jury's decision shows how important it is for parents to be mindful and aware of their children's needs. Do your due diligence with your child, he said. You cannot choose to take your own interest over your child, especially when it comes to mental health. Gun safety groups echoed that the verdict is a warning that parents can be held responsible. Plain and simple, the deadly shooting at Oxford High School in 2021 should have and could have been prevented had the Crumblies not acquired a gun for their 15-year-old. Nick Suplina, Senior Vice President for Law and Policy at Everytown for Gun Safety, said in a statement, "The decision is an important step forward in ensuring accountability and hopefully preventing future tragedies." This is from NBC News. So I want to kind of opine and comment on that. I grew up starting at age 7, going to the shooting range with my father. The shooting range that I learned how to shoot a real gun at was called Gabby Hartnett. And Gabby Hartnett was a Chicago baseball player who retired. He opened up a bowling alley, and I'm winking and making air quotes, and it was a bowling alley. But the gun owners knew that the basement of the bowling alley was actually a gun store and a range, and the bowling kind of covered up some of those sounds. So when I was a little kid, my dad had to bring a stool to the range because I couldn't see over the bench, and I, at 7 years old, stand up and shoot a .22. And it was one of the best things that I could have done. Kind of to give you an idea of what makes me tick, why do I do what I do? Why do I teach firearm skills? Why do I have a safety show? For me, it is a connection to my father, who passed away when I was a teenager. It is a connection to my past, and whenever I talk about it or do things with it, I get this warm memories, this warm feeling of going to the shooting range with my father, reloading ammunition in the basement, cleaning firearms. Really, it was just a really good time. So fast forward a few years, I was probably 10, 11 years old. My parents bought me my first gun because I got on the honor roll in junior high. And as a reward, they got me a .22 revolver. Now, they did it right. I never had access to the firearm unless we were at the range. My father had it secured. He would go to the range, and he had this plastic briefcase. He'd open the briefcase, and he'd hand me my gun, and I say my gun with air quotes, and I would shoot. And at the end of the shooting session, I would give, quote, my gun back to my father, who would secure it. Later on, when we had to clean it, he would unsecure it, teach me how to clean it, and it was always not good enough. Do it again. He used to have me do 25 cylindrical brush strokes through the barrel and through each of the 9 cylinder holes or chambers. I would do it 25 times each, and the NRA says 10 or 15. I'd hand it to him. He'd hold the cylinder up to the light, and he'd say, not good enough. Do it again. Yes, my father is old school. So I did another 25 strokes through the chambers and the barrel, and finally it was good enough. So 50 strokes times 10, because it was a 9-shotter, you got 500 strokes. It used to take me a long time to clean firearms. I've learned that you don't have to do 500 strokes to clean a barrel and a cylinder. But that's kind of my little aside story from earlier in my life. So they did it right. I never had access to it. Now, I was a responsible kid. Yeah, I had pocket knives, but today's world is so much different than it was back then. We've got the internet. We've got unfettered access to all sorts of information, the access to violence on TV, on cable, movies, video games is so much more prevalent than it was in the late 1970s, early 1980s, that I would never give a child under the age of 21 a firearm unsupervised. Now, I do take one of my kids to the range. He's very, very good at what he does. He's extremely cautious and careful, but he doesn't have the combination to the gun safe. He doesn't know where the firearms are, nor should he, because children's brains aren't fully developed until they're in their mid-20s. And that's when parents hear a giant pop, and that's usually the teenage head coming out of their butt. All right, so that was just a little joke. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Ray Luskin. Check out what I do on the side where I travel the country and give keynote speeches.
I want my listeners to know that this is my dream, teaching people about safety. If it weren't for you, if it weren't for my listeners, I couldn't live my dream. So on behalf of my family and myself, I want to thank each and every one of you for allowing me to live my dream. And I also want to continue to live my dream, and I'm excited to continue to spread the word of safety. Recently, I began a new service as a conference keynote speaker. So if anyone would like for me to speak at future events, or if anyone knows of an introduction or would like to discuss how we can work with one another, I'd love to do just that. The keynote speaking website is www.stress2logic.com. That is STRESS2logic.com. If you're aware of any conference speaking engagements where you'd like to have me speak, I'd love an introduction. You can always share my electronic business card, which is Marcus Melnick, MarcusMelnick.com. Now, back to the show. We have monthly concealed carry license CCL classes in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. Dates can be seen at firearmmentor.com/classes. If you have a question, we can be reached at www.firearmmentorcard.com. That is our electronic business card, has all of our contact information and links in it. It's the easiest way to get a hold of us. Until next time, stay safe out there, and I'll see you at the shooting range. This is Marcus Melnick from Firearm Mentor signing off. The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.